The iPad 1 came out in 2010 and sold 15 million units within its first year, but 6 years later, is it still any good? When the iPad launched, it was touted as the product to bridge the gap between the iPhone and the Mac. In 2010, this made a lot of sense, but as the iPhone gets bigger and the MacBook gets smaller, many wonder if even a brand new iPad is worth buying. On top of this, the iPad's aging hardware and low specifications mean it can't even run iOS 6. So in 2016, is the iPad 1 still useful? As a YouTube device, the iPad isn't really useful anymore. The built-in app works, but the only video available is one telling you to use the mobile site. Downloading the new app also won't work, as it requires iOS 7 or newer. Safari seemingly can't hide its menu bar, meaning that true full-screen video isn't possible, and it's so sluggish that trying to do much more than search for a video and watch it is difficult, if possible at all. For Netflix, though, the iPad does surprisingly well. The app works as expected, and video playback is smooth, even if the iPad's screen is very low resolution by today's standards. For older tablet games like Tiny Wings, or interactive storybooks like Flora's Forest, the iPad is fine, but many more modern tablet games will refuse to install or just crash when you try to run them. Still, even the most basic of games seem extremely limited by the iPad's performance. The only app that does not seem to suffer from this is eBay, which is surprising, as it is one of the more complex apps I tried. eBay 3.2.1 is a few years old, but it still works perfectly as far as I can tell. The built-in apps usually run smoothly, but even iOS 5 is hard on the iPad, and the device does stutter, especially when opening the keyboard. The built-in Photos app is good, but without a camera, you'll probably just be looking at screenshots, and in its 6-year life, my iPad has collected a good number of those. The built-in Mail app doesn't seem to connect to Gmail anymore, but the official Gmail app works, albeit very slowly. In terms of design, the iPad is much thicker than the iPad 2, and is even thicker than the MacBook. Holding it in one hand is tiring, and it's noticeably heavier than its successor, as well as over twice the weight of the modern iPad Mini 4. For hardware, the iPad is equipped with an Apple A4 SoC, 256 megabytes of RAM, and up to 64 gigabytes of internal storage. It also has a 1024x768 4:3 display and wireless N. These specs are very low today, but weren't even particularly impressive when the iPad came out. The iPhone 4, released just a few months later, doubled the RAM and more than doubled the pixel density, and still runs iOS 7, which is a very capable OS still able to run many modern apps, even in a much smaller device with less than a quarter of the battery capacity. So 6 years after its release, is the iPad still useful? Well, unless you love eBay, Netflix, and screenshots of eBay and Netflix, then the iPad is not useful. Combined with the fact that eBay sellers usually want to charge you between $50 and $100 for one, it's safe to say that basically nobody should buy an iPad 1 in 2016. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe even though I know you won't, and until next time, bye.